In the not-so-distant future, naval warfare won't be defined by missiles or fighter jets. The future of war on the seas will be defined by something far more extraordinary: lasers that can burn through the air at the speed of light, and railguns firing projectiles at over 5 times the speed of sound. We're talking about weapons that don't just fight, they change the game. But what if I told you the battle for dominance in Asia isn't just about who has the biggest navy or the deadliest missiles? What if it's about who controls the cutting-edge technologies of tomorrow? Imagine a world where the most powerful weapons don't need explosive warheads or large payloads. Instead, they rely on sheer force, either by literally slamming a projectile at hypersonic speeds or by focusing an intense beam of light to destroy everything in its path. This is the world of electromagnetic railguns and high-energy lasers. Both claim to be the future of naval warfare, but only one can emerge victorious. In today's video, we're going to break down these revolutionary technologies: Japan's railguns, a weapon that could obliterate any missile in its path for the cost of a car, and China's lasers, a defense system designed to burn through any aerial threat at the speed of light. But here's the twist. While China is parading its lasers and Japan is testing its railguns in the real world, the US is left in a bit of a bind. Why? Because the US was the pioneer of both of these technologies, and yet, today, it's playing catch-up. So, which one of these weapons is the true future of naval warfare? Will it be Japan's railguns, slamming projectiles at Mach 6.5, or China's lasers, which promise an infinite magazine depth? Stick with us as we explore the cutting-edge arms race happening right now in the Pacific. And stay tuned, because the fight for Asia's future is already in motion. Let's rewind a bit. It was the early 2000s, and the US Navy had a big idea. They wanted a weapon that would change everything. No more expensive, slow missiles. No more need for rocket fuel or complex electronics. Just pure power unleashed through the magic of electromagnetism. And thus, the railgun was born, a weapon capable of firing projectiles at speeds so fast, they would smash through anything in their path. We're talking Mach 7. That's more than 6 times the speed of sound. A projectile moving at over 5,000 miles per hour. That's faster than any missile could even blink. But here's the kicker: this railgun didn't just promise extreme speed. It also offered unparalleled power. Imagine the punch of 200,000 rifle rounds, all concentrated into a single shot. That was the vision the US Navy had: a weapon that could launch a 23-pound slug at over 8,000 feet per second, roughly the speed of a bullet fired from a high-powered rifle, but with the destructive force of a missile. And it looked like it could be a game-changer. In fact, in the early days, it seemed almost too good to be true. Now, let's talk numbers. A 32 megajoule railgun could send its slugs flying over 100 miles. It sounded like a military accountant's dream. After all, a Tomahawk cruise missile can cost anywhere from $1,800,000 to $2 million per shot, while a railgun round would set you back only about $25,000. You can see the appeal: missile killing power for the price of a compact car. But here's where things started to go sideways. The railgun needed an insane amount of power to fire. How much? Well, 25 megawatts? That's the full electrical output of an entire destroyer, all directed into a single shot. That's right, a single cannon required the power of a whole ship. And while only certain ships, like the Zumwalt-class destroyer, could even dream of providing enough juice to make the railgun work, the challenges didn't end there. Barrel wear became another major issue. In just a few dozen shots, the gun's rails would start to erode, its accuracy would falter, and the risk of catastrophic failure would skyrocket. Even though the railgun was capable of incredible speeds, it was still a blunt instrument: fast, powerful, but lacking the precision needed for high-tech, modern warfare. While the US Navy shelved its railgun project, something remarkable was happening on the other side of the Pacific. Japan, determined not to let this promising technology fade into oblivion, decided to take a different approach. The Japanese didn't abandon the railgun. Instead, they took a hard look at America's abandoned prototypes, borrowed the good parts, and made them better. By 2023, Japan's Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency, or ATLA, successfully tested a fully operational railgun mounted on a warship. That's right, Japan fired a real railgun shot, not in a controlled lab environment, but from a functioning warship, the JS Oscar, a 6,200-ton test platform. This wasn't some theoretical test. It was real-world, live action, and it was a first for naval railguns. Unlike the US prototype, Japan's railgun worked in the field. Atla's railgun fired slugs at an astounding Mach 6.5, or over 5,000 miles per hour. That's fast enough to make a missile look like it's standing still. And here's where things get even more impressive. The railgun fired 120 consecutive shots without destroying itself. That's right, no catastrophic barrel wear, no performance drop-off after just a handful of rounds. America's prototypes struggled to even get to 10 shots before they started breaking down. But Japan's railgun? It kept firing, shot after shot, showing that this technology could actually work in the real world. The cost per shot was also a huge win for Japan. Each shot from this railgun costs about $25,000, a far cry from the $10 million price tag of China's DF-17 missile. Imagine the math. For the cost of a single Chinese missile, Japan can launch 400 railgun rounds. It's a military strategist's dream, affordable, powerful, and reliable. And Japan isn't stopping there. ATLA is already planning to up the ante, mapping out a roadmap for 20 megajoule railguns, 4 times more powerful than the current version. These are the kinds of weapons that will find their place on Japan's next generation of destroyers in the 2030 seconds, and they could change the balance of power in the Pacific forever. Meanwhile, across the East China Sea, China is not sitting idle. In fact, they've taken a different approach, one that feels like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. China's laser weapon systems, particularly the LY-1, are changing the way the world thinks about defense technology. Instead of slamming metal at hypersonic speeds, China's laser systems promise something else, or anything flying too close to their ships. It's a weapon that costs pennies to fire, yet promises to strike with pinpoint accuracy. Unveiled during a military parade in 2025, the LY-1 high-energy laser system was introduced as a frontline defense weapon. This wasn't just a showpiece for the cameras. The LY-1 was designed to take on a very real threat: drones, anti-ship missiles, and anything that might try to outmaneuver China's growing naval forces. Unlike traditional weapons, lasers don't need explosive payloads, rocket boosters, or complicated systems. They simply need power, and as long as there's power, the system can fire endlessly. And that's the allure. With a laser, each shot costs just the electricity needed to fire it. No more expensive missiles or limited magazines, just an infinite supply of laser shots, as long as there's power and cooling. China's state media touted the LY-1 as a precision destruction system, capable of frying missile seekers and drones in a fraction of a second. Against small threats like swarms of drones, lasers are the ultimate weapon. After all, why spend millions of dollars on missiles when you can destroy an incoming threat for just a few cents? But before you get too excited, the reality of lasers is a little less perfect. While lasers offer an infinite magazine and incredibly low cost per shot, they have their own set of limitations. The biggest challenge is weather. Lasers scatter in rain, fog, and humidity. And let's not forget the salty sea air at sea. Optics corrode quickly under constant exposure to spray, and atmospheric conditions can rob the laser of its power. In fact, even the U.S. Navy's Helios program, a similar laser system, has had its fair share of struggles with weather interference and ruggedizing for real-world deployments. So, while China is showcasing its new laser weapon as an answer to naval threats, the reality is that lasers, despite their promise of infinite ammo, are still a work in progress. The technology is powerful, but how effective will it be when it's time to fight in the harsh conditions of the open ocean? That's a question China, the U.S., and every other naval power will need to answer soon. So, we've got two radically different technologies: railguns, which fire solid projectiles at mind-boggling speeds, and lasers, which burn through targets with the precision of light. But which one reigns supreme? It's not as simple as you might think. Let's break it down. On one hand, we have lasers, the ultimate weapon for dealing with swarms. Picture this: 100 drones all flying toward your ship, each costing thousands of dollars to build. For China, the answer is simple: unleash the laser. Each shot costs next to nothing, and the laser can wipe out targets one by one at the speed of light. Lasers are perfect for cheap, numerous threats like drones or even small, low-flying missiles. And because they can keep firing as long as there's power, the laser system has an essentially infinite magazine. Enter the railgun, a weapon that doesn't care about fog, rain, or even sandstorms. It simply hurls a solid slug of steel at Mach 6.5, more than 5,000 miles per hour. It doesn't need any electronics or fancy targeting systems to be effective against high-speed threats like hypersonic missiles or heavily armored ships. When it hits hard, delivering pure kinetic energy with no need for explosive warheads. However, the railgun isn't without its challenges. The technology is still in its early stages. While Japan's railgun can fire 120 shots in a row without malfunction, the U.S. prototype struggled to get anywhere near that number. The railgun's power requirements are immense, requiring the full electrical output of an entire destroyer just to fire a single shot. And while the cost per shot is incredibly low compared to missiles, the need to reload after each shot means it can't fire endlessly like a laser. So, which is better, the laser or the railgun? Well, it depends on the threat. Lasers are unbeatable when it comes to small, fast-moving targets, like a swarm of drones. They're quick, cost-effective, and can keep firing as long as the power holds out. But when it comes to heavier, more dangerous threats, think hypersonic missiles or large, fast-moving ships, the railgun's raw power and speed make it a far more formidable opponent. While China and Japan are pushing the envelope with new technologies, the United States finds itself in a critical position. The U.S. was the pioneer of both railguns and laser systems, and yet, as of today, it's nowhere near as advanced as it should be. The question is, will the U.S. be left behind in this new arms race, or will it catch up and reassert its dominance on the global stage? Let's start with the railgun. The U.S. Navy spent over $500 million on the development of railgun technology, yet by 2021, the Pentagon pulled the plug. Why? The railgun had undeniable potential, but it was just too difficult to make practical in real-world combat. The power requirements were astronomical, the barrel life was far too short, and the system lacked precision targeting for dynamic threats like missiles. So, the U.S. decided to abandon the project in favor of hypersonics and lasers. It seemed like the dream of an electromagnetic cannon would just fade away. But here's the kicker: Japan didn't give up. In fact, they took the U.S. prototype, tweaked it, and made it work. Today, Japan is testing railguns in the field, showing the world that this technology isn't just a fantasy. And now, Japan is pushing forward, with plans to integrate even more powerful railguns into future destroyers, potentially putting them into service in the next decade. Meanwhile, the U.S. is still debating whether it should reinvest in the technology. Here's the tough reality for the U.S. The competition in Asia is already well underway. China is showcasing its laser systems at high-profile events, proving their capability in front of the world. Japan is testing railguns in real-world combat scenarios, showing that the once-dismissed technology can be an effective deterrent. Meanwhile, the US is still discussing funding lines and planning future programs. The question is, will the US play catch-up, or will it take a bold step and join forces with countries like Japan to integrate railguns and lasers into its fleets? As we look to the future, one thing is clear: Asia is leading the way in the next generation of warfare. China is rolling out its laser systems with promises of infinite firepower, while Japan has taken the railgun, a technology once considered a mere dream, and turned it into a formidable weapon, now tested and ready for combat. The question is, will the United States be able to reclaim its leadership in this new arms race, or will it watch from the sidelines as these technologies reshape the balance of power in the Pacific? Hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you found this breakdown insightful, and don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notified when we dive into the next chapter of the Pacific arms race. The future of warfare is here, and it's already firing. You won't want to miss a moment of it.